welcome to this week's Thursday episode of the 905 Roundup. I'm Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And this week we're looking at a few stories from Halton and Hamilton, starting off with Hamilton, where the approaching municipal election is becoming more interesting, not quite as interesting as I'd like it to be. But anyway, yesterday, Bob Brattina, who we've discussed a couple of times in this podcast over the months, finally threw his hat into the ring after promising to throw it a few times previously. So there are now two people who have their hats in the ring to be mayor of Hamilton, and that's Bob Brattina and Keanin Loomis, the former CEO of the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce. And well, Joel, what's your thought on the Brattina announcement?
Everything that's old is new again, I guess. This has got to be the most unsatisfactory news to come into Hamilton in quite a long time. I mean, this is not surprising. We all knew, if you remember back before the last federal election, the feds came into Hamilton with, basically saying, hey, we'll build you a brand new, spanking new LRT, all the bells and whistles, all the fixins. We'll build it for you. You just run it. And that was too much for Bob Brattina to bear. So he had to take his ball and go home. And he resigned he basically said, I'm not running in Hamilton East Stony Creek. And everybody knew then, he's going to go run for mayor because, you want to be the guy running in Hamilton that's going to say, that brand new LRT that we got that everybody's now keen on building, that we're all, we don't have to spend money to build it now. The feds are going to build it for us. Yeah, I'm going to ruin that. I'm going to come in and stop that. That's like a little bit. It's kind of like read the room, Bob. Like, the thing, people want this thing built. Somebody else is going to come pay for like all the obstacles that you had to it have previously been removed for you. And now you're going to be like, because what, principle? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, he said in his announcement yesterday when asked on the LRT subject that, this thing has a kind of life of its own now, and I've only got one vote. Well, that didn't stop him standing in the way before, and it didn't stop him while he was still in Parliament, trying to get the Auditor General to investigate his own party and the spending announcements that were being made between the Liberals and the Progressive Conservatives provincially, and obviously that went nowhere by the sound of it. But even on his way out the door in Ottawa, he was trying to throw a hand grenade into LRT, and I other than the kind of feeling that this is a way to get votes in the suburbs of Hamilton, because there are people who don't see the point of things that they don't feel they're going to use, I just don't see the obsession with it. Now, he says, he's kind of implied that he's not going to make this a central issue in his campaign, and I really hope that's true, because I think, everything suggests that the good people of Hamilton are sick and tired of this subject and have already had, 3 referendums and counting on LRT, dating back to the first time that Brattina ran for mayor, when he was actually a supporter, I believe. And this is before my time to an extent, so forgive me if I get any facts wrong about Hamilton's history.
But here's the thing, Roland. Even if, let's take him at face value, say that he is not going to stand in the way of LRT. Say, I'm just one vote on council. Yeah, we know how politics work, but don't tell me you're not going to don't tell me you're not going to turn this into a reason. Like, why else are you running? We were looking at the history of recent municipal elections in Hamilton, and it's the same kind of 3 characters that kind of keep popping up, and the 3 fixtures in Hamilton municipal life. And it's starting with Larry Deaney, then Fred Eisenberger, and then Bob Brattina. And, it's just kind of these 3 guys just kind of fighting over each other for the job. It's like, come on, give Hamilton a break. Like, get honestly, it's like doesn't Hamilton deserve a new ideas, just a new vision, not just like, it's my turn now. Fred's had a kick in the can twice now. Bob's like, well, now it's my turn. I get job number 2, and then what? Next term, Larry Deaney gets to come back and run it for a second time as mayor again. Like, it's not a fiefdom that you get to pass around to your buddies because, oh yeah, I'm going to go off and make some money and I'll come back and because I like to hear the sound of my own voice.
Ironically, again, his announcement yesterday, Bettina mentioned, his council was somewhat fractious and there were a number of votes to censor him by other councillors. And he said, "Oh well, it was an old boys' club." It's like, yeah,
still
no kidding.
is. It still is.
You're one of the oldest of the boys. I mean, I tweeted yesterday, and I appreciate this is kind of a superficial tweet, a dumb tweet in some ways, but boy, would I like to see anybody in the race who is not a white man over the age of 65, 70, and sure, Keanin Loomis is under that age, but he is a white man, and fine. It would be really refreshing to see some women, some people from other sections of Hamilton society, other communities coming in there. And there's stuff about, again, the quote in The Spectator was I think it was a safe hand on the till or in the till. No, at the till. Let's make sure we get our prepositions.
And the till might be actually a pretty good analogy.
Well, that's it. I think the phrase is actually a veteran hand at the tiller, as in boats and steering thereof. I don't think till is actually the word that Bob was looking for, but anyway, I thought it was funny that he ended up with that one. And that's one of the oldest cliches in politics is like, anybody, if you're trying to stop someone beating you, you say they don't have experience. You remember it with, he's just not ready with Trudeau, and it's nonsense. It's doubly nonsense at municipal level where he Bettina had just moments before said, well, I've only got one vote. Well, Keanin Loomis will only have one vote too. You're basically the chair of a board of directors, and the staff are there to guide you.
But the idea is you need a vision. Like we've had on to this podcast a number of people from Hamilton who are all pointing towards the fact that there are people who are greatly, and this goes back long before the current cast of clowns in Hamilton politics. Hamilton is dire need of new ideas, fresh ideas, and bold ideas, stuff that's going to reinvigorate that city, because it is the idea of holding on to some glorified imagination of the past of what Hamilton, like the heydays of Steeltown are not coming back. Steel is gone. And I find that the Bertinas, the Eisbergers, the Deannies, all these old school candidates, maybe that worked in the day to hold on to that idealized version of Hamilton, but that version is long gone. I don't even know if it ever existed. We need new ideas. We need.
I mean, the one pot shot that Bettina took at Loomis was that Loomis had dared to suggest that Hamilton needs more new businesses and a diverse business base other than just Stelco. And Tina said, "Well, that's not good enough. We can't just sort of discount." Well, I'm sure he wasn't A, but B, yeah, absolutely. Hamilton needs more than just Stelco. It's not a steel town anymore, primarily.
No. US Steel doesn't want to be there. US Steel doesn't want Stelco, the site there. They want to shut it down and move out. They want other US Steel properties that are more profitable, not the old Stelco. And that's what these guys don't get, is that the world's moving on and they're thinking, oh, everyone else is the problem, not us. And it's just, guys, read the room. Yeah.
Well, I mean, talking of reading the room, perhaps Judi Partridge read the room, because she announced yesterday that she's not running again after being a councillor since 2010, I believe. We are now at a position, if one more member of council, and that includes the current mayor Eisenberger, who has not announced one way or the other whether he's running again. If another member of council should say that they're not running, we'll be in a dead duck situation, which I want to give the credit here to Joey Coleman for having read the Municipal Act more carefully than me. If when you get to that state where a certain percentage of councillors have said they're not running again, or members of council have said they're not running again, the remaining council is then constrained from acting in a number of important ways. And I think there's like they can't spend more than $50,000 or something, which in a municipal context of a city the size of Hamilton is kind of pocket change. So that could be quite a significant thing. And apparently the staff are already preparing for the fallout from that if another council member says they're not running. And certainly, I mean, there are a few councillors who should definitely think about not running, who haven't said so thus far. And
but yeah, maybe
but anyway,
maybe that's a good thing. Maybe if enough councillors just say, "Yeah, I'm seeing the writing on the wall. I'm not going to put myself up for that kind of scrutiny." And walk away now, okay, fine. So there's a Hamilton City Council that doesn't do anything. Like, is that really so bad? Like, what are they doing? What's on the long-term agenda that City Council is trying to push forward that you're like, oh, they really need to get that done. They really need to get that motion passed, because there doesn't seem to be and maybe this is something to say about City Council. When
and to an extent it happens every election anyway. That there is a period,
but
kind of equivalent of the RIP period. The city can't behave in the way it usually does.
But there's something about
it's not that big of a deal.
I just want to finish my thought here. There's something about the way that we picture government. Like, if you think about it, you elect a federal or provincial government, and they'll have an agenda, right? They have a platform that they're trying to implement, and they have usually 4 years to implement it. And you can the idea is, we vote on you based on whether or not you implemented your agenda and how well it implemented. City councils, at least in my casual observation, they don't really function in that, because really everyone has their own agendas to work towards. There's no party platforms that you're trying to implement. It's just 12 people around a table all trying to say, okay, I'll agree with yours, I'll do yours, you vote for mine, I'll vote for yours, and somehow it all works out. Like, and that's kind of what the mayor's for. The mayor's there to kind of say, no, this is the long-term vision for the city. We're going to build infrastructure. We're going to implement these programs, et cetera, et cetera. And that's something I haven't really seen, not just, and this isn't a Hamilton issue, this is entirely a 905 municipal issue. You just don't see like that long-term vision for a city. It comes down to this kind of petty, just myopic vision of, well, yeah, I don't want that. I don't want a high-rise going there. I want this. Like, there's no long-term vision for the city of what we want the city to become. This, what's post in Hamilton, what's post Stelco, what's post Steel, and nobody's been able to come up with that for 10 years. Sorry, scratch that, 20 years. Nobody's really been able to present like what's the next phase of Hamiltonian greatness. And maybe that's why Judi Partridge and the rest are bailing too, because they're like, I don't know, they don't know what that is. Let's walk out now.
I mean, to be said, I wouldn't even blame that on the councillors. I'd blame that on the way our municipal systems work. Bob Bertino is right in one regard. He only has one vote. I mean, a council, when you're running for election municipally, it's very difficult not to say, I want to do this. But in essence, anytime a councillor, and that includes the mayor, says, I'm going to do this, they're lying to you, because they have no idea if they're going to do that or not until they get elected. And we have a system that was designed to be weak, and as a result, we get weak results. And if you want a vision thing from municipal government, it's difficult to know where the hell it can come from. And it comes from staff. If it comes from anywhere, and that's a funny kind of democracy, I always think. But it's a system we've got. It doesn't seem to be a huge demand to change it, but I do think it comes with problems, and that kind of putting a platform in front of an electorate and saying, this is what we are going to do if elected, doesn't exist at a municipal level. And I do think that's a problem.
Absolutely.
But I mean, just coming back to that just briefly again, it is going to be a very different council. Even if everybody is re-elected who's running, it's going to be substantially different. Sam Morello will be gone. Brenda Johnson is gone. Judi Partridge is gone. Russ Powers, who replaced his name escapes me, the councillor in Stony Creek, is not running. And Chad Collins, sorry, that's his name. So there's going to be about a quarter change, even if it's a complete rerun of 2018. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to be a rerun of 2018 unless I'm very much mistaken. So it does seem there's going to be a significant amount of new blood on the council. Let's hope it's, and again, experience, don't need it.
Ambition. Let's see ambition.
Yeah.
All right, let's call it a break for now, and we'll be back with the other side of the bay. And we are back. So, as I promised, we're jumping across the bay, across the Skyway, into the grand old region of Halton, specifically Halton District School Board, where they got into the news today, this week because of cuts. And I'm being very facetious here. I'm being melodramatic for no reason, but apparently the Halton District School Board decided that they were going to need to shuffle resources and basically eliminate in the elementary levels of their schools the teacher librarian position, because the reason that they were giving is essentially the last 2 years, because of COVID, the disruption of school life. Students are behind. They need, in their case, the change in staffing is going to result in hiring 15 permanent learning resource teachers who will be able to help to provide early literacy support for those who need it in the Halton District School Board system. And those librarian teachers will be shuffled into different roles within school. So it's not that they will be losing their jobs specifically. They'll still be employed by the school board, just in a different capacity.
Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
Oh no, I was just going to say, we were talking about this story before we hit record, and that's just, I don't really view this as a fault of the district school board. I think they're being, and I'm gonna have a lot of people yell at their car radios when I say this. I think that the DSB is being responsible on this front. They need it, if you're a parent of a kid in an elementary school, regardless of the grade, you got to notice that your kid is not where you think they should be, probably, in terms of their education. Virtual learning just did not work for a lot of students. You might have gotten by, but let's face it, just the social development or just certain areas, your kid just isn't quite up to par. And quite frankly, there is no plan that we can see from the provincial government to make this up. It's let's farm it down to the various school boards to figure it out, and this is the result.
Yeah, I think. I mean, maybe it's an easy target to say blame the province, not the board. It is kind of how my biases, or it's how my feelings go, and you can call those biases, or you can call it well-based opinion, as you like. I think when we was first of all, this got a lot of attention on Twitter and social media, so it definitely seems to have touched a nerve with the public that it didn't touch with the local media particularly. There is an article in Inside Halton. I think that's the only one I've been able to find, and there was some criticism too that this was not a decision. This decision didn't go to the board of trustees. It was made by the professional staff of the board, if you like. I suspect there's a reason for that when it comes to issues of employment and things like that. But I don't know for sure. I'd have to check that, and we haven't checked that. That would be my assumption, is that if it didn't go to the board, there's a good reason for it. And also, I don't think it going to the board, I don't think that anything going to the board really helps it, usually. It brings back a very, very distant memory to me from before I immigrated to Canada of growing up in the UK and under Margaret Thatcher, and that's when all our librarians got disappeared. In fact, the libraries disappeared shortly after, very often in schools. When the pressure is on finances, these extra things which have all kinds of value. Don't think that for a minute I am minimizing the value of them. Teaching, if the only thing that librarians do is teach a few children to love reading, that is a massive, massive contribution to society that we are losing. However, when schools have been told to sort of dip into their reserves to pay for things that the provincial government was getting money from the federal government to pay for, and then that money wasn't making it to the schools. I mean, by the billions of dollars. I'm going to blame the province for this. So I mean, every one of those teachers is still going to be teaching. They're just not going to be teaching the library component of their jobs. I do think that's regrettable, but I don't know what else you're supposed to do. I'll be honest. Current climate.
This is quite frankly part and parcel with conservative government in this province. I know you weren't aware of this, Roland, but back in the 90s in the Mike Harris, Ernie Eves era, like the emphasis was on STEM, right? Schools in Ontario should only teach basically like math, science, and that's it. Just the basics. You don't need all these fringe, fluffy duffy, loosey goosey. That's just waste of time, and that's just that's hippy dippy bullshit, so to speak. And that's that's your arts, that's your music, that's your basic stuff.
History,
Sorry, English.
What I'm passionate about.
No, but it is. It's like it's the stuff that I guess conservatives felt, oh, that's just a waste of time. All you need to do is teach somebody how to add and subtract, do some basic science, and that's it. That's all you need to get a good job in this province, which is utter complete bullshit. And what I think it is just because once you get into history and art and English and those subjects, that requires critical thinking. That requires you to start to take a pause and say, wait a minute, I need to process this. Why is this happening? Why did this happen? What were the consequences of these things? And you become smarter and you're a bit more discerning towards, the powers that be. And I think that's, I mean, this is me editorializing, but that's I think the conservative mindset is if all you're doing is just thinking math and science very logically, you don't think critically of why is this, what's the consequence of this? What's been the history of what's happened in the past on this? What could we take that and infer could happen in the future? And that's what happens. That's what this conservative government has been doing all along, even before COVID. That was the case. And so bring it back to the HDSB, it's highly regrettable that they're eliminating the teacher librarian position from elementary schools. I think it's a credit to the HDSB that they managed to keep the staff, like the teacher librarians as staff, still on the payroll. Good for them. Nobody wants to lose a job. So kudos to them. But this isn't really like we're going to find a more efficient use for those resources. This is, let's salvage what we can. And that's a sad state of affairs. If we're at the point of after COVID, let's salvage it. Let's not try to rebuild it, build it back better. Let's make it better than ever. What new technology can we make to make it more efficient, more interactive, more educational? Let's salvage it. Let's try and scrape together something to present to students or just the fact that say, yeah, virtual learning sucked. It wasn't the savior we were hoping it would be. So we need to double down to bring students back up to speed where they should be. And I think that comes down to is like, what are we 2 months now out of the election, and we have yet to hear anything from this government about how we're going to rebuild the education system in this province. And we did
hear last week was I don't know if you caught this story, but there's certainly there are draft proposals instead suggesting that teachers or support staff become kind of unpaid nurses, basically, who could administer injections to children. Now, the average teacher is already doing far more than teach. I mean, that they are already acting as social workers, as carers for children with exceptionalities, and it's part of the problem we have as a society is we don't really many of us don't really know what teachers do, and teaching is just one part of it. So I thought that was an absolutely insane,
it is insane,
ridiculous idea. But
that's what this government goes through. It's like, well, let's try and maximize. If you do one, you can do another thing, and it's incredibly insulting to just throw that on because you're a teacher, you can do whatever I tell you to do. It's insulting, and we're missing a huge opportunity here to look at building back this education system into an envy of the free world, an envy of the first world. It should be. We should be coming out of COVID with new ideas. We've had all this experimenting with virtual school. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. The idea of including new technology into the educational material, it should be something that should be examined and see what resources can we put in front of students now to make them more tech literate and tech savvy and tech critical for the 21st century. And this government is doing nothing in that regard. It is just letting this opportunity pass us by. And it's just, it frustrates me. It frustrates me as a parent to say, I try to teach my kids to be tech critical, tech literate, social media conscious, all that stuff. And we had 2 years of students in front of a computer being taught by their teachers, and we didn't learn anything from it to say, okay, yeah, that sucked. But nobody thought maybe use this time to educate students on being a little bit more critical of what they're reading online, how they're interacting with technology, especially in this day and age, what we've seen south of the border, what happens when people are stupid and go to Twitter. Again, this government has no faith in our education system, and it frustrates the shit out of me.
It has no faith in it. It didn't use it itself in many cases. I mean, Stephen Lecce famously never used it himself. He didn't go to a public school.
Absolutely.
I mean, there was an article the other day, and I can't remember off the top of my head where it was, but it made the point that I think is ultimately almost certainly true, that the ultimate objective is that we have an American-style system where those that can afford it and are fortunate enough send their kids to private schools, and the rest, the underclass that you create as a result, go to public schools and basically don't get educated. And I think we have to be on our guard for that, because that is just a horrendous notion.
Yeah.
But I think it's absolutely the notion that is at the core of conservative thinking, that the state shouldn't do anything, and if it does do things, it should almost deliberately do them badly, and force us to go out and pay for it.
But the rest of us agree. But that's the thing, is that education should be the great equalizer. Everybody, because we've seen that you could be the poorest of the poor, and you get a great education, and you can figure, well, I can work to better myself and better my community and better my situation, and you become a better person. If you're stuck scrambling to figure, well, I need to figure out how to pay tuition for grade 3, you're not a better person. You're just scrounging the bottom of the food chain, so to speak. That's not an education system. That's a Hunger Games model for society, which doesn't end up that well. But if you have an education system that creates people smarter, critical, and honestly, God, like free thinkers, and just looking at new and innovative solutions to the problems that we have, my God, that society can do anything.
The clue's in the name, I guess. They say conservative, and it strikes me always that the problem is not even the left-right economic side of things. It's the core conservative ideology is ultimately what I think is right, and whatever's at the top of my head, whatever seems like the first easy solution to anything, is obviously the right solution. And if I have to think more than a second about it, then I'm not interested anymore. It's a disaster. Our competitive advantage in a country like Canada, we can't compete with China on wages. We can't compete with Malaysia or Singapore or wherever, Bangladesh.
We can't
India.
compete with
on wages.
With America because of population. We have a lot of things working against us in the world, people. Let's be honest. We don't have the population.
So we compete on education. That's exactly what we've got, is education. And if we don't have that, we're screwed. We're absolutely screwed. The US, we see that the the age of the American empire, if you like, is drawing to its close. We see evidence for that surrounding us, that China is the next, I don't want to sound like some kind of crazy conspiracy theorist, but I think that's good evidence to suggest that China is the next top nation or whatever, and part of the reason for that is that you can't get things done when you're not democratic. I mean, but also you can't get things done when you're not dealing with dogmatic right wing dogma, and I'm expressing myself exceptionally badly, even for me. But they have state-run schools, and boy, they're kicking our asses. So maybe state-run schools are not such a bad thing. I'm oversimplifying, undoubtedly, but
no, it's right. I mean, if the greatest thing the 20th century ever brought for democracy was publicly funded education. You had smarter people who were engaged, who were literate, who knew about the world that was around them. They absorbed it, they processed it, and they made educated, informed, and creative choices to solve the problems. They didn't always get it right, but we always moved forward. The Conservative Party, the fact that we're 2 months out from this election, we do not have any idea of how they plan to rebuild the education system after COVID is kind of frightening to me. And it's something that we should be starting to ask Doug Ford and Stephen Lecce more and more as we get closer to the election, because it's an answer that needs to be done, need to be answered. And I'll leave it at that for this episode.
Yeah, I'll just finish off, as is my want, because I can't shut up, with one final thought, and that is that as a society, we have to demand complex answers to complex questions. That if a politician knocks on our door and says that something is simple, the perfect exemplar of this is Donald Trump. That everything was going to be easy, everything's simple, and for him it is, because he has no brain. The world is incredibly complex, incredibly difficult. Governments are massive things that are really difficult to move in any particular direction. Businesses are vast global entities. The complexity is mind-boggling. We've got to have people who are capable of understanding complex concepts and leading us in an extremely complex world. It's almost that simple, if I can undermine my own argument right at the end.
All righty. Well, let's leave it at that for this episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll be back next Tuesday with another episode. Until then, take care.
All right.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns, or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.